you work a lot with KPI, with other Kansas Policy Institute, with other state organizations, and how do you see their value of working with parents and how well they kind of find them or how they engage with them?
It's really, is this on? Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, you just got to speak like right into it.
Okay.
Like.
It's so exciting to see this unfold. Delina is one of the first education entrepreneurs I got to know when I went to Wichita in March of 2023. It was really at the first time that State Policy Network, because of Carrie McDonald's work with us, got to bring these education entrepreneurs together with a state-based affiliate, in this case, the Kansas Policy Institute. It's such a mutually beneficial relationship because I think the education entrepreneurs are getting to see, okay, there's people in my state who live here who are active, in this case, in Topeka, and they know what's coming, what's happening in committee, what lawmakers are talking about. So while you're doing the work of teaching children and helping serve families, you have someone who's going to advocate for you and your interests, totally free. You're not hiring a lobbyist. And then for the affiliate in the network, they get the benefit of, like Delina said, having people who are seated at their table informing how they think about policy so that it's not just done in a vacuum, it's really a collaborative effort. I'm so happy to see Bill Maddox in the room. He runs education for our Florida affiliate, the James Madison Institute. Yay, I know that we've got some Florida edupreneurs in the room. I think about just what we've seen in Florida with Bill's leadership, bringing Carrie, JMI, hosting this workshop with, we took over one of the Innovative Educators Network's meetings in last October, and here I am coming with my 50-state visibility, thinking, okay, Florida is the gold standard, like, woohoo, Florida, everything's gonna be great, and we hear all these problems with Step Up and payment. No shade to Step Up, love you, Ron and Laura, everyone. But we hear about all these problems, and Bill is so amazing, and he sits there and he listens. He wants to hear from you. And he takes that back. When Carrie and I went back in January, it was like things were worlds better. And that's just an example of why these relationships are so important, because not everything needs to go to the Capitol. Like, they didn't have to go to Tallahassee in this case. The people who were most impacted by these problems were the ones to solve them. So if you take nothing away from my remarks today, whatever state you're in, please reach out. I want to connect you with our affiliate. They want to help you. Some, like in Kansas and Florida and Utah are much farther along as far as the extent and depth to which they engage on education entrepreneurship, but all of them have an interest in hearing from people in their state and serving you.
Yeah, I think that's critically important, just, kind of that, the recognition, I think, that you're not alone when you have a problem, when you're dealing with your deal. I like to tell myself whenever I deal with any problem in life, to be honest, I'm like, probably not the first person to deal with this, probably not the first person to have this barrier. Kind of zooming out to those challenges that entrepreneurs and education founders are having, Mike, from your perspective, what are some of the ones that you're seeing pop up? What are, if you can speak to that, kind of what you're seeing as through your pipeline at the legal.
Well, that's a good question, Matt. I want to step back a little bit and say, what is it that we want when we talk about policy, right? We want to be left alone. Yes? Anybody not want to be left alone? Okay. And so we just want to do what we want to do, what we know is right for kids in our community. And I think that's what we're all motivated by. Yeah, we want to make a living, etc. How do you do that? I think that's what we're talking about here. How do you do that in your local community, your state community, even national, right? We're in a federal republic, maybe. But how do you do that? And so I look at the homeschool movement. Any people here homeschool people? I didn't expect to see everybody's hand practically go up. So I do see like this movement micro school and innovative learning, I feel like a lot of it is migrating from homeschool into this new space. Now, I do also see it coming from the other way. You see, frustrated teachers and desperate parents and discouraged students fleeing the system from that direction. But I feel like that's kind of the market that's happening. But it's like, so I look at the homeschool movement, it's like, in 1980, there were virtually zero homeschoolers, like I said, and it was illegal to homeschool. So how do you go from illegal to homeschool 40 or so years later to 5 million homeschool kids? Like, I think isn't that the trajectory we would like to be on? Now, are there things we can learn from that? Are there differences we should pay attention to? Are there similarities that we can? And I think there are some important differences. Number one, not only was it illegal to homeschool, but it was a criminal offense. Like, I don't think, in theory, the families, like, you're the entrepreneurs. It's your families who are potentially subject to the criminal offense, not you, right? And you care about that, right? But it's not like, you're doing something criminal by starting some learning environment, unless you're an unlicensed daycare, in which case maybe it is. Okay, so that's a question. To your point, Matt, it's like the whole childcare thing. But, how do you go from illegal to thriving, flourishing movement? And not only thriving and flourishing, but in the early years, the laws on homeschooling were pretty restrictive when they were passing them. Since 2000, it's been completely the other way. They've been pulling off regulations left and right, which is kind of maybe a little counterintuitive. People would be like, how did that happen? This small little ragtag band of malcontent rebel homeschool parents, how do they do that? They're a tiny fraction of the population, yet they are a force of nature. Go to any state capital and say homeschool, and you're like, whoa, what? What, are the homeschoolers not happy? What do we need to do to make the homeschoolers happy? Just tell me, and we'll do it. I mean, I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I mean, I was the guy kind of pushing those buttons for years, going to, Concord, New Hampshire, Omaha, Nebraska, leading. If you can lead homeschoolers, it's like herding cats, But, going to these capitals with thousands of parents. Okay, we're talking Omaha, Nebraska, a population of, 20, 50,000 or whatever. And you got 3,000 people coming into town, packing the Capitol. The legislators are shaking in their boots. Because why? They don't want that. Legislators want to be liked. They like to be liked. They don't want controversy, right? And so when that happens, they're like, whoa. And so there's this echo that still exists, I think, and I think we saw it in Missouri recently with some stuff. And there's other states where we're seeing things like that. But so when you want to change things, right, there's a way to do that. And I just think there's some things we can learn from the homeschool community about creating, like what Delina is doing in Wichita, these partnerships, but also grassroots. So there's a grassroots piece to this, which is you, the families, and you, the entrepreneurs, connecting like we're doing here and thinking about, okay, how can we engage in our community, get people activated so that we can see the change we want, right? Because we want that. Today's laws were not passed with you in mind. And so, for some of you, you're existing off the radar. You're like, okay, nobody's bothering me, so that's great. Some of you are being bothered. Some of you wonder, I could be bothered. What do I do if I do? And you may just ignore it, and that's good. Like in the there were homeschoolers who were prosecuted, but a lot weren't. And so it's kind of hit and miss. It's a big country. It's easy to hide as long as nobody's like saying, yeah, I'm here. What are you going to do about it? Right? We don't want to do that. And so there are laws that are an inconvenience in some cases. There are obstacles in some cases, and it does depend on state by state, and it gets very complicated very quickly when you're talking about, the ESA law in Florida, is making it hard for me because I'm not getting my money quickly enough. And some people are like, you have an ESA law and you're getting money? Yeah. I wish, right, sort of. So it's like, it's very state-oriented. But at the end of the day, what we want is policy change that is going to make it easier for us to exist, easier for parents to interact with us, and we need to create those policy influencing organizations and pathways and awareness in our community so that we can do that kind of thing. So in terms of the specifics we're seeing, I mean, you name it, Matt, you name it. We're seeing, regulatory issues that span private school laws that are difficult to accommodate, right? Some states it's very difficult to become a private school. In other states, it's like, yeah, I'm a private school, like right now. I just say it and I am. Okay, Colorado, for example, in some states. So childcare regulations, some people think childcare regulations apply to them unless there's an exemption, and that might be true, but even if it's not true, there are regulators who think the childcare regulations apply to you, and they come up and they're like, you're a childcare, you're not licensed, shut down or else, which is happening. And so there's a need for clarity. And then you've got other laws that are generally applicable to all businesses. Like some states require everybody to have a business license. So you got to go down to the town hall and they're like, hold up, what are you doing? You're not a school, you're not a daycare, what are you? It's like, well, you need this business license, you need to get a fire inspection. Oh, really? You say you're not a school, but you're here for educational purposes. That means we have to apply education group E to your non-school, whatever you are, and you need fire sprinklers, right? And so it's a complicated landscape, and so trying to navigate that is challenging. Yes, what we're trying to do, one, is to help individuals navigate those challenges in your state, in your community, and try to figure out that pathway to get to where you want to go if it's possible. And it often is, if you think about it. And if you're off the radar, nobody's bothering you, great. We don't want you to have to try and figure this out if nobody's bugging you, but you may need to. So those are kind of some of the areas of regulatory challenges we're seeing. But I'm excited about you who are here. And when Delina told me what she was doing, I was like, yes, this movement needs to start energizing these pathways so that we can work together and influence policy so that we can ultimately be left alone. So,
Let me just take Mike's point. Who here has ever had hit a barrier, a road bump, a policy challenge, all right, Steve, now start thinking about what question you're going to fire at the panel in a minute. Thinking of that, knowing that there's parents out there, there's founders out there that are having these challenges that, I'm a big believer that we should be probably elevating these because there's power in numbers. How do you see the best way, and this is to anyone on the panel, how do you see the best way that founders can plug themselves into these conversations, that they can engage in the policy debate or seek help or find community?
Mike mentioned grassroots organizing, and I would be remiss not to also make a plug for grass tops organizing. Something I've had the benefit of seeing traveling all over the country and getting to meet people like Delina and Shireen and Tony who have these organizations that are bringing founders and prospective founders together. That's really good, that convening, that network of people who are in this with you. But another thing that is happening in a lot of states, and we've got Sharon Sedlar in the room, I think of her as one of the premier grass tops organizers in Pennsylvania and the region. She's, happens to be an education entrepreneur herself, but her organization, the Pennsylvania Families for Education Choice, she's connecting, she's on this conference circuit. She's meeting all of you all over the country. She's another way, and people like that in your state who you can plug in with. So even if your state isn't in the place where Kansas or Florida is with this totally organized, and I think, Delina, right, you've got the third chapter now in Kansas starting of education entrepreneurs who are collaborating together. You can also plug into those grass tops leaders. And again, got to make a plug for your State Policy Network affiliate, because what we're seeing, I think about Michigan, a state where there is no private school choice program on the books currently, but there are all these unbelievable education entrepreneurs in Detroit, Metro Detroit, and throughout the state, who are forging ahead anyway and serving families. And I know that once they've made this connection with the Mackinac Center, which is State Policy Network's partner in Michigan, those are the relationships that are going to outlast one or two legislative cycles, one or two campaign cycles, because they're founded based on trust. and an understanding that everyone is benefiting. So when the political tides turn and choice comes to Michigan, those are the founders who are going to stand with Mackinac, and Mackinac is going to stand with them. And through passage, through implementation, be there to support each other to make sure that if they're participating in programs, that families are happy, students are satisfied, and educators are satisfied.
So,
Yeah.
Sharon.
Oh,
Sharon
Sharon.
Sedler.
Sharon, who I will echo, if you want some inspiration and real practical advice, Sharon would be a fantastic person for you to connect with. So I saw a lot of high-level story stuff before. Let's get practical here. What does it take to change policy? First of all, you need to know what policy you want to change and why, okay? But
Well, let me stop
Yeah.
you there. Do you need to know? Does everyone here need to know? I'm losing my voice. What policy? Or are there people out there that can help them?
That's where I was going to go, Matt. Yeah, so I was going to say, so that was just kind of high level. Not saying that you necessarily individually need to be the one who's doing it, because you've got groups like State Policy Network and their affiliates like Bill and Sharon who are, connecting, okay? But we need to know what we want to do. But what can you do at your level as an individual person? Maybe you don't want to get into, being like a Sharon or even organizing like Delina is. Maybe you just want to be an informed citizen. Get to know your legislators. You have legislators. Unless you live in Nebraska, you have a Senate and a House, okay? Anybody from Nebraska here? Okay, forget about that. They have a unicameral legislature, the only one. It was the thing. They thought everybody was going to do this, and then nobody did back in whenever they did the 20s and 30s. And there's a good reason why now. Anyway, fine, Nebraska. But you've got a senator, two senators. You've got House delegates, representatives, whatever. Get to know your representative. Don't be afraid of them. They want to get to know you, I guarantee it, okay? They want to have good relations with constituents. And if they know you, and be nice, right? I mean, even if you're a Republican and they're a Democrat, or you're a Democrat and they're a Republican, you know what? They care about kids, both Democrats and Republicans. Everybody cares about kids. We may have different views on how we get there, but okay, whatever. They care about kids. And you have kids. Bring them to your school. Say, hey, would you like to come and do a school tour with the parents? They're like, oh, yeah, constituents? Yeah, let's go, right? So get to know them, number one. Number two, if you want to go a step further, connect with like-minded people, like these people in the room here, okay? 3, find a coalition of some kind or a leadership organization, and that's where the grass tops come in. That's where your SPN groups, could be your homeschool organizations, could be family policy councils. There's a whole bunch of different organizations that have relationships with legislature who care about what you're doing and want to help you, right? So 3, find one of them and work with them. The next thing we all need to do is we need to work within a coalition as much as we can. You'll hear this word coalition. There are coalitions, which are these groups of organizations that are not, they're not the same. They're different organizations with different purposes. But when we can find common ground, and this is an area of common ground, making education better, we want to work together, okay? And so we can do those things, and there's disagreement among the coalition oftentimes. And so if we can work to find common ground, we can be more effective. So I'll stop there for now.
Yeah, I'll just add to it, but basically reiterating what they said. I think of like in social work, there are 3 different types of systems that help make change. And there's the on the ground, the individual, you would consider that the micro level system. Then they have the macro level, and a lot of people are more familiar with those 2 types of systems. So you have the individual, you have the families, you have the educators. Those would be at the micro level. Then you have the policymakers, you have healthcare, you have these major systems and organizations at the macro level. But there's also something called the meso. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing it right, because sometimes it's with the Z and sometimes it's with an S. But that meso layer there, that system, is what Jane's referring to with that grass tops organization. So in my specific role, I'm a homeschool mom. I have 6 kids of my own, so I know and I get that. I've also started and directed a homeschool co-op and a micro school, so I get the education entrepreneur part. But I realize it takes connecting these people doing the work with the policymakers and the ones who are going to help bring about the change. And so those types of organizations like WISE, like these other collaboratives, you call them coalitions, collaboratives, grass top organizations, those are so important. So if you're not going to form one and be the person to organize people, that's totally fine. But I agree with what Mike said. Find a coalition, find a group, find someone who is working toward the same goal in your state and organize with them. And if they're organizing an event, show up to it and be supportive, because the more that you guys work together and grow in numbers, the more powerful this is and the more that people start to pay attention. So
Great. What questions do you all have? Any questions? Yeah. And when you do it, a couple rules, right? It's a question, not a statement. And introduce yourself and where you're from. Go for it.
I'm interested to hear your comments.
I
Yeah.
just want to say thank you so much. I'd never heard that mental level before, and I think that that's kind of like what I've been thinking in my head, but not able, so thank you.
Yes.
I really appreciate that language.
yeah.
Are there buzzwords that we can be looking for that reps and senators are using, or like that may be coming out? I find that, I didn't really know, I think in the industrial education model, I didn't really know how it all worked until COVID, and I got really active with that. Just kept going to Jeff City and Salem, Missouri, and really annoying people. And so I guess like one thing, I feel like I carry a lot of torches, as I'm sure most of you do, and I'm looking for like buzzwords that I could be like heightened of that would be impacting homeschool law in my state, that they would like almost like, I don't know, words that I would like maybe be able to Google or look in articles for, or in Facebook groups that might trigger my brain that something is either coming, they're working on something. They just had this huge omnibus bill that ended up being 151 pages. They threw a million things in there. Listen, we're in crush time recession, like I get that. But, so I'm looking for some of those buzzwords. If you guys know of anything that they're using or that might be coming in the next year, we're working on stuff right now for next year. But
I'll let Mike take the homeschool buzzword piece of that, but something I've observed, and it's funny that Delina talks about the mezzo, because that triggers for me where my office used to be in the Capitol in Springfield, Illinois. When I worked for the governor, it was in the mezzanine level, like literally sandwiched in this door that was by design difficult to find, so people couldn't come find us in the governor's office. Like, it's, blessing and a curse. But a word that I think of, having been a comms director before for lawmakers, that I don't think education entrepreneurs are using enough is small business owners. You guys aren't just educators. Like, you are small business owners, and there are few things that state reps and state senators care about more, especially if you're a constituent of theirs, than the growth and success of small businesses. So don't forget to plug that piece of this too. Like, you're not just an education entrepreneur. You're not just some homeschool mom who decided to start this co-op. Like, you are a small business owner. Own that. Like, that's what you're doing. And it's really important, and lawmakers care about it.
That's good.
I 100% agree with that. This is, again, where I would point to the, grass tops, I like that word, grassroots. There are organizations, is it Kate? Yeah. Yeah, who are like Bill. Like, Bill has his ear to the ground in Sharon. They have their ears to the ground in Florida and Pennsylvania. They have tools that are scouring the legislative website to pick up on these buzzwords. They're watching them. It's a lot for one person to do. Yeah. So that's why it's really important to connect with one of them. On the homeschool front, you've got HSLDA. You also have in, was it Missouri? Yeah. FHE, Family Home Educating. So they're doing it too. They're working with HSLDA. Doesn't mean they're doing it perfectly. So there could be opportunity for someone else to come in and do that. But they have websites. They have legislative action tools. They're bringing that to your attention. Now they'll track things. They have trackers. You can go to that tracker and check it out. And it's an imperfect thing. When I was doing this at HSLDA for many years, the tools will tell you the day after there was a hearing. Right. It's like, oh, great, thanks a lot. I can't get my people there because it happened yesterday. I didn't even know about it. So that's why people like Bill and Sharon are so important, and others. And there are homeschoolers, and that's why we need you guys. Like, we need somebody in this movement also to be thinking about, okay, I'm going to start building those relationships. Because, Sharon and Bill, they have other issues. You're not their only issue. Now, you're an important one, maybe the most important one, but they have other issues, and so they can't get everything. But you, like the homeschoolers, are focused. I just care about homeschooling. We need somebody, I just care about, unconventional education, whatever that is. And building those relationships with the committees that matter. Now, this is where it gets a little complicated, because there's regulations that affect us that are like 3 or 4 different committees. Small business owners, childcare regulations, education. I mean, watching 3 or 4 different committees is challenging, and each committee has a gatekeeper. Like, the gatekeepers are usually the ones who are persistent, like the deep state, right? They're always there. So getting to know those people, getting to know the council for the committee. Like, that was my main thing. Like, okay, you're a legislator, you get a vote, you're important, I want you to like me, I want you to do what I want you to do. But I know that I need to maintain a relationship with this gatekeeper, and that's not just the council, which is the lawyer for the committee, it's also the secretary for the committee. It's like, I got to know the secretary for the committee, and I brought them chocolate. I would be like, how are you doing? And I care about people, but, it's like, I'm not doing it just for a purpose, utilitarian. I do care about people, but, you want to be nice to them. You want to be on their side, because you know what? They'll tell you stuff. They'll be like, so what's going on these days? Like, oh, did you hear blah, blah, blah. And then it's a little bit different with the council for the committee, so you'll be like, kind of like, so, because they don't want to tell you anything. Like, so, what are you doing? What law are you messing with now? We might be joking about it. It's like, okay, so where are you guys? Here's my perspective. So there's relationships, and then 4 committees. How are you going to do that? I don't know how you're going to do it. I'm just telling you what we got to do. Across these different committees. And so, Kate, you want to know when there's things happening? I mean, it's bottom and top. It's looking at websites. It's also building relationships so that they know you care. Like, if you have a rep who's on one of those committees, and that's your rep, you can be like, hey, I care about this issue. And they know the reps on the other committees. So you can be like, hey, if you hear something going on in childcare, if you hear something going on in education, if you hear about something going on in zoning that might affect schools or education, keep your ear open. Please let me know. And that's why building those relationships across many different levels. And you may find the secretary is the most helpful. You may find the council is. You may find the rep is. There's no single formula that's going to make you successful, but you got to start somewhere. So starting with your rep, I think, is a good idea.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
Tag them. They watch those social media. Tag the policy committee, tag the education committee, tag the leadership, tag both sides of the aisle.
Yeah.
So that both sides know what you're advocating for and know that you're paying attention. And then get your posse to chime into that as well.
Yeah, I've friended them all. They see all of my stuff every day.
Well, make sure other people do too.
Right, oh yeah,
Yeah.
no, I'm very, listen, I'm like a shark, I'm very active. Can I tweak my
Yeah.
question? I'm sorry, I'm real bad about asking questions, I'm super ADHD. So Missouri's opened up this family-based education, was a buzzword in regards to calling it wasn't homeschoolers that they were quote unquote addressing, they were changing the words, right? So I guess that's more of my question is are you guys seeing anything that's happening across the country, like I'm in the Midwest, so, on the East Coast or the West Coast, are they changing the terminology for homeschooling? Are they, because that's marketing 101, how do we rebrand, how do we change this so that we can slide things under? That's what I'm looking for more, is how is the terminology shifting?
So something that I feel strongly about, as I have a foot in both worlds, or a foot in both camps, I advocate for education entrepreneurs and these micro schools and hybrid schools and all the creative learning environments. But I'm one of those hardcore traditional homeschool moms who's don't mess with me, don't infringe on my freedom. And I want both. I actually advocate for school choice policy in regards to those families that maybe can't homeschool full-time in the traditional sense, and they can't afford the private schools that they want to attend otherwise. They need some funding for that. So I see, and I'm able to reason with the other homeschoolers. I mean, that's what I try to do is hey guys, just because we don't want this and we're saying stay out and keep out of my business doesn't mean you need to be at the Capitol, you know, saying don't pass school choice bills, like we don't want it. And it's like, okay. So in regards to language with homeschooling, I do feel like it's important. And we have done some sessions together with Colleen Ronrick from the Cato Institute, and she wrote a paper about this and the importance of carving out homeschoolers from the school choice policies and having different wording. And I know the one that comes to mind is in West Virginia. They have the Hope Scholarship, right?
Yes.
And the students who might be educated at home, they, if they receive the funding, they're Hope Scholars. It's different than the homeschoolers. And I think that that's important. That's something that personally in Kansas, we don't have school choice policies yet, but if I have anything to say about it, I would help encourage the direction of that bills are drafted with that language.
I don't know if you guys saw Eric Werna just wrote in Education Next, I think like last week, a piece about what do we call ourselves? Like, this is such a fluid movement. Are we hybrid homeschoolers? Are we co-ops? Are we micro schools? What if we're 150 kids? Are we still in micro school? It's all questions that are worth asking. The piece is excellent, highly recommend. But language is really important. But I think we need to be kind of flexible with this as we're evolving as a movement, because it could change. And part of why I think all of us at this table are a little like, to regulation is because we don't want any of you to be boxed in to being something that you maybe don't identify as, or, you know, like maybe you don't like being called a micro school. That's cool. But we want as much flexibility as humanly possible. But definitely read Eric's piece. It's great.
We're behind you, then we'll come to you. Sorry.
So I have kind of two questions. One does go back to the language and using the language of being small business owners, but a lot of us are nonprofit and don't actually own our business. And I like to be very specific so that nothing ever comes back and bites me. Is language like that just small business or supporting small business, is that a good way to represent that as a nonprofit instead of the word owner?
That's a really excellent point, and definitely understand your desire to be cautious about that, especially when speaking with lawmakers. I work at a nonprofit. State Policy Network's a nonprofit, but I'm an employee. So State Policy Network is an employer of 50-plus people. So tweak however best fits your model and whatever you feel comfortable with. But the point really is just to say, like, you're employing people, families are utilizing you as a resource, you're part of the community, you have all these outgrowths that you're impacting. So, but yeah, don't get into like murky legal waters, and if you do, call Mike.
Well, yeah.
Not a lawyer.
And is there any discussion of any kind of national level framework to support, maybe even kind of nudge states into a general kind of school choice direction, or being open to that? Is there anything nationally, I guess, that might incentivize that, or any conversations about lobbying at that level?
Are you talking like at the federal level?
Yes.
I mean, hold your breath, but there is kind of a evergreen conversation about an education tax credit at the federal level. I've got mixed thoughts on that. I think we probably all do. I think there are definitely some blue states, especially in the State Policy Network world, who look at that as like, this is all we're gonna get, so we might as well take it. My personal opinion is like federalism always, like, I would way rather see something happen at the state level than at the federal level, but I'm not sure if I'm answering your question. Is that what you're, like programs at the
Are you
federal level?
referring to government agencies or like
Yeah.
Okay.
organizations that,
I guess legislation that guarantees particular things, and then within that framework, or with the exception of taking away those particular things, then states make their own policies around that. But is there any framework like that in place or being discussed?
I'll jump in. We used to work at the Department of Ed. Jane raises a good point. So there's conversations that are always ongoing in DC, and there's a lot of ideas that come out of DC, and most of them are terrible. The approach that I have to the Department of Ed when I worked there and now would not be a how do we get the Department of Ed to do things for us. It is how do we get the Department of Ed to get out of the way and do less things, right? And so I think it's more of like the mentality. And there are conversations like that. Heritage has been having some of these conversations. Heritage Foundation, AEI, and others. Happy to connect with you afterwards. But I think the approach is less about having a proactive role of the federal government in this space, but instead looking at procedurally how do we get the Department of Ed, how do we get other agencies out of the way, as opposed to using them as some sort of means or mechanism to give us what we want, if you will.
Yeah, I'd like to piggyback on that because Michael and I have had some conversations, and so there are some areas where the federal government is very influential in our movement, particularly in the area of special education.
Yeah.
IDEA, Title IX is now a thing, which hopefully will not affect this movement, and Americans with Disabilities Act. So there are a few federal laws that are relevant, but I agree with what Matt said, which is, we want to be left alone. So moving them out of the way is the thing. However, with that said, there are still some things that probably could be done to help make everybody's lives easier, where you have this national law. And so I've been thinking about that. So but we just got to be really careful.
Right.
Well, invest
Right. It's playing with fire.
Yeah, it really is.
Invest in Education does have the ECCA they're doing on the
Yeah.
federal level,
Yeah.
which is endorsed by the HSLDA. So if you go to invest in Education.
That's
you
a
look up-
federal
you look
tax
up the
credit for-
Educational Choice for Children Act.
Right.
Yep.
So there is movement.
so I just wanted to add, these are not government agencies, but they were really helpful for me to learn about. These are national organizations that definitely are promoting school choice at the national level, but engaging with people, individuals in each state. So National School Choice Week, that's a great organization to get involved with. Yes, Every Kid, the state policy networks, Ed Choice, yeah. So those are there's Americans for Prosperity.
AFC.
Who else am I?
AFC, American Federation for Children.
Yep, American Federation for Children. So I didn't know about these organizations 2 years ago. Like, I had never heard of them. And the more that I've gotten aware of policy and what's happening, I'm like, whoa, I should connect with these people. I should learn from them. I should read the things that they're putting out, and I should form a relationship with them in my state. So I would encourage you guys to look them up and make contacts and relationships with them.
So really quick, I'm from Florida. Thank you. I'm sorry, I'm from Miami, which is not part of Florida. I'm so sorry, let me correct myself. Somebody might post that. And so my question is, as policymakers, how do we combat and with the confrontation that I'm having? I just had someone the other day, you're taking money out of the public schools. Well, first of all, I'm a public school product. I'm a daughter of a public school teacher. I taught in public school for 25 years. So then I say that and they stop. Well, what are some things that we can do on the local level? Because for me, everything starts local, especially in Florida. Everything starts local and then it goes up and it goes up. And I use Florida Rising because they always on the forefront of telling me on social media, what's coming through, what's happening, bills in the back. We always use James Madison, and I'm from Virginia, so we love James Madison. And so what would be something that you could give us for the local level to start the policy change, or even start to change the understanding of, people are always coming to be like, oh, you're a homeschool. I'm not, and they're here, and we love them. Because some of their kids come here, so mom can take a break.
Yep.
I work with teenagers. And so mom doesn't know trigonometry, you can come to the hub. And so what would be some things, or steps, I love steps, because that's what we love, that we could do for local policy before we get out into the state and everybody else?
Okay, I'm just gonna give you one step.
Okay, there it is.
One step answer. Invite lawmakers, neighbors, public school teachers, anyone, literally anyone off the street. I mean, maybe not, you've got kids, like
Right, okay.
safety. Invite them to see your program. Invite them in. I am, 13 months into knowing what a micro school is. I went to Catholic school first grade through college. I did not know a single person who was homeschooled growing up. It was like public school or Catholic school where I grew up. That was it. I have now become a complete fangirl of all of you, and like just want nothing more than to see your programs, see the kids you're serving. One of my peeves is when politicians say our kids. They're not your kids. But as someone who is an education advocate and is not blessed with children of my own, like I truly get up every day and think of your kids as my kids. And there are so many people who would be have daggers up about what you're doing because it's taking money from public schools. It's not their money. But if you invite them in, you can't see these micro schools and co-ops and whatever it is you're building and not instantly love it. And we're in this room of, yay, we're all excited about this. Most people don't know this is happening. They do not know this is happening. I was one of them 13 months ago, did not have a clue. So the more visibility you can bring, and SPN affiliates are really happy to help with this. Bill has been tremendously helpful bringing lawmakers to various micro schools around the South Florida area. Just 2 weeks ago, I was in Omaha with Karen McDonald, and we connected LaDonna Griffin, some of you may know, founder of Leaders to Legends Homeschool Co-op, with our affiliate, the Platt Institute. Next week, sessions out in Nebraska, next week, the entire Platt team is going to check out Leaders to Legends because they haven't seen this and they want to know what's in their own backyard and be a good neighbor. And I just can't wait to see what comes of those relationships. But the relationship can't start unless you invite people in.
I do want to acknowledge, just because so many of you raised your hands about homeschooling, and I imagine a lot of you are micro school leaders, hybrid school leaders, I want to acknowledge that it can feel really risky. And I get that. I've been in that position of, inviting a journalist in to learn about these schools that are basically working under the radar and have been up until this point. And to Mike's point, we want everybody to leave us alone. We want policy, just don't mess with us. And sometimes I feel that I'm putting a target on my back. And with all of the school founders, I'm raising awareness of this movement and with their permission and collectively we've decided, and that's again where I want to just highlight the power and the significance of collaboration, because when you're doing it alone, it feels super scary, and it's sometimes scary with a group as well. But it's gonna take those risky steps and people willing to take that risk to make this change. If you're familiar with the bell curve, there are the early adapters and the innovators who can be the first ones to make a step towards a movement and to bring about change. And a lot of people, the vast majority, are not those who are willing to take the risk. They would be ones to let's just wait and see what happens, and then we'll come on later. So I would encourage you, if you are that type of person who's willing to take a little bit of risk, I would encourage you to take this step, but do it with others. And so I'm going to be speaking with Shireen and Tony about collaboration and the power there that comes with it, and that's in the next session. So we'll talk more about that there. But I wanted to acknowledge, I get it.
If you have
it's
questions about the risk factor,
Here and then here.
if you are concerned about the risks, that's something that, yes, legal can talk with you about so you can get more comfortable and confident about being able to be more open about what you're doing. And if you encounter a regulatory conflict, that is something that we're prepared to help with. So
All right, we have 9 minutes left, so we're going to keep firing. Now questions are firing. Go ahead.
So really my question was that if we're someone who's flying under the radar, but I am also someone who in my past has brought people together and created organizations, and I've brought kids to Congress over things, right? So now I have this micro school and my son in this micro school. I would love to bring people together. And so I get what you're saying, if we have problems to come to, yes, every kid, but is there like an in-between of, these are the things we kind of should shy away from if we're trying to stay under the radar, but these are the areas where, yeah, it's like free reign.
Where are you located?
Philadelphia.
Pennsylvania. Well, I mean, I don't know. You just don't know.
Okay.
You have to make that decision yourself based
Okay.
on your own assessment. I mean, we've talked to people in New York City who, they're like, well, we want to grow, we see the demand, but we're afraid. And you can understand why. You really can. And so we've talked to them. We've tried to say, well, here's how we see, the organizational issues, childcare, blah, 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 blah. And we've gotten people to a place where they feel a little bit more confident about at least adding more kids. Maybe not going out there with a billboard or something, or inviting the New York City Department of Education or whatever in, hey, look what we're doing, check it out. They're like, so, but anyway, yeah, but we're ready to help you.
Okay, great, thanks. Very much along the same lines, we're both from Pennsylvania, from the Pittsburgh side. I've been in the space for about 5 years now, and I think I have come on the brink a few times of being very, very public, but have walked it back because of fear and that risk. Last year, a college in our area hosted a conference that was for sort of like this, okay? And it was fabulous and I talked to the professors that were hosting it, and I was like, okay, what we need to do is we need to get all the leaders of these groups in Pennsylvania in this room. Like, this is what we need to do. And they're like, yeah, let's do it. And they were on board. I was so excited to get validated by these professors in academia, and they were going to take on research. And they said, okay, you need to gather these leaders because we don't have access to them. They don't trust us. And so I gathered them, and I had 40 of us all together from the Pittsburgh metro area of micro schools and hybrids in our area that had all been flying underneath the radar. And then the college pulled out, and everyone got scared, and everyone scattered underneath the rocks again. So what do you tell? I mean, I'm scared too, because I'm getting pretty large now, accidentally. Very accidentally, trust me. And I value our educational freedom. So what do you tell? What do you tell me, and what do I tell these other people that are scared because we don't want our freedoms taken away because we love what we do, and we have our own kids skin in the game.
Yeah. Well, first thing I would say is let's talk and figure out how much risk are you really at? Well, right, that's right. But until you start having a conversation, yeah. So let's talk. I mean, give us, go to yeslegal.org, sign up for an account, submit a question. I'm afraid, I don't know why. Or I'm afraid of this.
How afraid should I be?
Right, and I mean, that's very general and very broad, and we'll want to talk about like what exactly is prompting you to be afraid. Is it childcare laws? Is it you don't feel like you what is it? So let's get specific, okay? And then once we've gone through that, then you'll know. Or you'll have a better idea at least, and then you can make a better, more informed decision. But also, I want you to talk to Sharon.
I'm in Pittsburgh.
Okay? You guys need to have lunch, okay?
I'm going to tap you after this.
Okay, there we go. All right.
I apologize.
But I go to Philly too.
Okay.
I go all over.
She goes everywhere.
I go everywhere.
Yeah. Pennsylvania, over there.
We'll fix it.
So I'm from Florida, Orlando, and our micro school Steps Learning Center is for kids with special needs. But we work with the kids that are, really high needs. And besides the IDEA and the No Child Left Behind that leaves every child behind, it's what movements, if there's any, are geared towards special needs. And like we're working with kids that have cerebral palsy that now are forced into this standardized testing that they have to take, and then parents get penalized, school scores go down, so nobody wants them in their schools. Charters do not want them in their schools, public schools do not have the resources to work with them. what is being done or what can I do? Because it's a situation where I have parents crying in my office every week because their child doesn't have therapy or whatever they need because the insurance says that the school should get that, but the school is telling them, oh yeah, they can get 15 minutes per week.
I am so excited to tell you that there's a new organization.
Yes.
I'm obsessed with this organization. It's called Unique Learners Unite.
Yep.
Dan Bosnos, who lives in Chicago, where I live, just founded this. I think there's like people on Yes on the advisory committee. Jenny Clark's involved, parents of kids with special needs. Dan himself has a child with Down syndrome, and they're new, like they're getting started. But I would love to connect you because they want to be the voice for families and founders of children with those extra special needs and talents. So I'm just so excited that there is like this new organization dedicated to that.
So insurance companies don't want to pay for anything.
Never.
Okay, but the just because now you're getting some scholarship money from the special needs
FDSUA.
scholarship. Okay,
Yes.
so there's a
That one.
so there.
We didn't get the private school thing because I was having that problem where they wanted me to invest $30,000 in a fire alarm system
Oh, okay.
and all that. So
Okay,
we're
okay.
now.
Okay.
We didn't have to go through that though.
Okay.
because-
I mean, if you got
Right.
if you got the ESA, would that make the difference? If you were able to be a private school and get that funding for your families who then got it, would that be enough?
It could, but the
Okay.
problem with at least the private school requirements for the
Yeah.
ESA programs
Yeah.
is that you have to do standardized testing. And then they kind of pushed me into that standard, like I have to prove to them that we are doing something. And it's like, but you don't get it. It doesn't work. It will take 3 years for this child to actually work on addition. Doesn't matter if they're in kindergarten because this child doesn't know how to communicate.
So who's
yet.
telling you have to do the standardized testing? Is that
When you switch over to, if she
Yeah.
goes into private,
yeah?
you will have to do standardized
Yes.
testing.
If
Every
you
order.
take-
You have to do
We would have
at
to do.
minimum the FSAA, which
Yes.
is
Okay. Okay. Well, so that's a barrier. Bill
Yeah.
is probably aware of that. Is that something you guys are looking at? Doing something about? Did you know Bill?
no.
Okay, Bill.
Look at
Bill,
that.
here's your story right here, buddy. Take her to Tallahassee and let's get this fixed. Okay.
Tell me when to go.
Okay. I mean, so one, insurance companies don't want to pay for anything, but they still have to. And just because the kid is in a school, especially if it's private, if the parents have put them there, that does not mean that the insurance company's off the hook. So sometimes it takes some advocacy that the parents may not feel equipped to do to push. You have to sometimes push these insurance companies to pay what they're supposed to, because if the parents have if the kid has a medical issue, it's not educational, it's medical, right? Even though it may be interfering with their education, okay? And just because public schools are under IDEA does not mean that the insurance companies don't have to say, well, you could go to your public school and just get this there. No, they cannot say that. They are not allowed to say that. But they do, because they just reject everything and they say, well, you want the money, come and get it. So you have to advocate, and we don't do that, but we could talk with you a little bit about that to help maybe find some legal, language that might help you help your parents or whatever. So just a thought.
We're at time.
Okay.
There's more questions. I'm going to volunteer the panel to stick around for a few. I know you have another commitment, but first I want to give you guys a round of applause. Thank you so much.
Matt, you were an awesome moderator. I wish you had talked more.
I'm free afterwards to talk as long as you want. I just have 3 things I would just like to share that I think help summarize, which is what I heard. One is a quote from Sal Alinsky, who, if you're not familiar with Sal, our politics probably don't align. But his quote was, change comes from power, and power comes from organizing. And I think that's the message that I think would really be the big takeaway here, which is find your education ecosystem. Start there. Find friends in this room. Connect with them. 2, engage your lawmakers, both parties. Doesn't matter who it is. Invite them. Be courageous. Share your story. The more that we share our stories, the harder it is for those who oppose our work to silence us. the more that we rise up and really like engage, suddenly they realize that this isn't a movement of one, it's a movement of thousands. And then that movement of thousands really represents millions, movement of millions. And finally, share your perspective. Share your perspective with your friends, with your family. This movement moves through socialization. And so I just encourage you to really just own your story and share it. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.